Hello, everyone. So today I'm very excited. I have a guest, Ron. Ron, you'll talk more about yourself, but we're going to tackle the topic of leadership, leading ourselves before leading others, and how it really helps us work on our emotional eating. So, Ron, tell us a bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, the basics are I'm Dr. Ron Stotts, three-time best-selling author with a PhD in psychology, also a doctor of chiropractic, and been teaching meditation for about 45 years. And so that's kind of the basics. And I work with executive leaders. I really help them recognize that all of their challenges are really based on them looking outside of themselves for answers that they can only find within. And so it's that inner guidance that really is the core of my work from the very beginning, the foundational healing the past work to the higher level top executive, leadership
Really?
work.
Yeah, it's really interesting how you say you help people find the answers within rather than outside.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of the listeners out there that do emotional eating, I mean, not to generalize, but a big proportion of them are hyper empathetic. They really feel for others. They've often had a childhood that was not straightforward, where they've been told what to do, how to have what emotions to have and not to have. So all of this making it so hard that they want to shut everything down with food. So they're not listening to their body, they're not listening to their intuition. And the idea to stop emotional eating is to, restart and look within. Um, so yes, tell us a bit about a bit about how looking within looks like.
Well, looking within starts with you have to breathe and you have to be present enough to look within. I find most of the clients that come to me don't breathe fully. They don't breathe deeply. Every time they want to answer a question, they stop breathing and looking up in their head. Every time they are in a point of indecision or struggle or stress or boredom or whatever, they stop breathing and go up in their head. And that's, of course, that's the reason they do that is because that's the safe place for them to go. It's like a childhood game where you have a tree that's home base, and if you can just touch that tree, then you're safe. So people do that, and they do it for a very good reason. I mean, I've traveled the world asking the question, what does a child want more than anything else? And everybody very quickly, in whatever language and whatever culture they come from, answer unconditional love. And the next question is, well, what is a child willing to do to get that unconditional love that they want more than anything else? And the answer, of course, anything, whatever they have to. And so that's where it all begins is, you were suggesting that some children suppress and express emotions in relationship to, their family or their upbringing, that type of thing. And I think you'll find that that's true for everybody. Certainly, there's people with more significant childhood issues than others, but we all really, because we want that love and acceptance from our family, our life depends on it, and especially in the beginning, we look at, well, what's okay? What allows me to get closer? What makes them, move away? If I get angry, oh, that's not good. If I cry, well, sometimes with dad, that's not good, but with mom, it's good. And so we begin to regulate our emotions and shove them down into that inner cave that to one of my mentors, Joseph Campbell, refers to. And it's in that inner cave that we really have to journey to rediscover ourselves, to reconnect with all those disparate parts that we shoved down and ignored and um, chose not to deal with because we wanted acceptance and love from others, And
Yeah. And it's funny when you were saying breathe, I realized I wasn't even breathing when I was introducing you. And because there is a part of me, like a voice that's like, go, 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 go. There's always go, like you have to be faster, better, perfect. Don't do any mistake. So,
but
yeah.
of course, as soon as you stop breathing, you literally cut off most of your access to your high level of thinking. So that only makes you much more prone to making mistakes and not ever seeing what your optimum options and choices might be. You just aren't able to think as well as you would be able to otherwise if you were breathing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting. It's so true. Yeah, you're not sending oxygen to the brain. So
Exactly. Right. Right.
so okay, for we will start the way I want to do this episode is to start by the basics and level up and level up and level up, like for so that we help people throughout their journey wherever they are. So
Mhm.
let's say someone is starting their like self-development journey and they want to know where they are, if you want, on their on the ladder, if you want, if there is one, of self-leadership. How can they assess, okay, where I am and where I need to go?
How can they assess that?
Yeah.
Uh, well, I think the initial things they can do is just assess that by their life. Are they a leader? Do they feel like they're a leader? Do they feel worthy of being a leader? Do people follow them? If nobody's following you, then you're not a leader. If your
Mm.
leadership is really about being a boss, which means just dictating to others what they have to do and punishing them or somehow making their life more miserable if they don't, that's not a leader, that's a boss. And so a leader is one who is really inspiring others, is bringing out the best in others. A leader is focused on how do I support everyone in doing their best. And so all you have to do is look in the mirror and answer a few questions like, am I this or am I that? And how am I doing to determine what kind of leader you are.
It's so interesting. And I want to use this definition of boss versus leader for ourselves because I'm imagining um, like the human as you have different parts of you. Let's say you, yeah, I wouldn't say different person, like different, yeah, voices, different people. I don't know
Sure.
how you would describe it. So,
Personalities,
yeah,
aspects, characteristics.
yeah. Yeah, different personalities. So, are you a boss of yourself? Where I'll introduce how I see it, and then I'd like your point of view. Like, are
Right.
you a boss, or like you punish yourself? You're very mean to yourself, and you're like, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to eat that. Or do you want the best for yourself? Do you want to support yourself?
Mhm.
Definitely, I can answer. Although I've done a lot of work on myself and therapy and everything, I'm still a boss. I'm not a leader. I'm sometimes very mean to myself.
Mhm.
So, what's your
And so
opinion?
there's a very deep belief system that you're sharing with us you're doing that not because you're bad or there's something wrong with you. You're doing that because you believe that's what you need to do to motivate yourself to do what you feel is best. And you probably picked that up from your parents, or at least in relationship to your parents. So you have to go back and really reconnect with that little girl that's still within you and help her heal that past. It's almost like she locked herself, or at least many parts of herself, she locked away in that cave within,
Oh,
just to get acceptance and love from others, to feel safe so that she could live. And so it's a matter of really going back and connecting and asking her what she's feeling and help her really acknowledge, fully express and let go of that backlog, that emotional backlog that's really holding you back as an adult.
yeah. A lot of it makes sense. What do you mean by emotional backlog?
Well, as we're growing up, a lot of things happen that we don't know how to emotionally deal with. A lot of things happen that we don't know how to emotionally deal with, and somebody doesn't help us emotionally deal with those. So in all of those circumstances, which are many, we shove those emotions down into our gut, into that inner cave, in
Mhm.
hopes that we can heal them later, in hopes that somebody will help us later, and in hopes that nobody notices that we have all these flaws and character problems that will keep them from accepting and loving us.
Yeah,
So, and it is that journey back into that cave is that journey to, that's where you're going to find that unconditional love because you're the only person that can give it to you. You always were the only person that could give you that unconditional love.
yeah,
And it starts by you recognizing, reconnecting with this those disparate parts of different parts of yourself that you stowed away.
Yeah.
Connecting and learning to accept and love them, heal them. And until you do that, you'll be at the effect of all that backlog, that all that you tried to hide will continue to spurt out in different aspects of your life when you least suspect it or need it or want it. And, you know, it's like a child. You can lock them in the closet, but at some point they're going to start screaming and yelling. They're going to disrupt your life even more. So, you know.
Yeah. It's as if the way I see it is that there are several inner caves, and then you open few ones, and then you realize throughout your life and time that, oh, actually I'm reacting very like intensely to this
Mhm.
situation. So probably there's another cave that still I
Right.
didn't dig through it.
Yeah, and that's your indicator right there. You know, if somebody pulls in front of me in traffic and I go shake my head, you know, in upset because it was dangerous, you know, might have hurt my wife or something. That's one thing. If I'm, you know, yelling and screaming and trying to run them off the road, that's an indicator that there's a lot of anger from the past that's coming up. And so anytime you see, those are just indicators. Anytime the emotion is disproportionate to the situation that you're in, then that's just an indicator of something that's ready to be healed, that you need to go back in and acknowledge and help them express that emotion and heal that emotion so that they can become reconnected and integrated into the whole of who and what you are. That's how you become whole. That's how you become self-accepting and self-loving.
Yeah. Yeah, and talking about this example of the car, like if like road rage, if you react so intensely um, to a small incident on the road, it means that yeah, you're not making the decision, or the thought process is not, you're not leading it. It's someone else is kind of leading it for you because you're basically reacting to other people's behavior.
Well, yeah, there's a part of you that's reacting.
Yeah.
You know the old saying of you can't control what happens to you, but you can control how you respond to what happens to you. And the more healed you are, the more conscious you are, the more aware of your thoughts and feelings and what level of awareness you're in at any given time, or what those are your indicators of leadership. Those are your indicators of self-care. Those are your indicators of self-acceptance. That's really your determinant for, you know, everything in your life.
Yeah. I have a like a topic that is going through my like I have been questioning myself for a few weeks, and actually it's coming up now, which is about you know, when we have very strong emotions like anger or like real deep sadness or grief and everything, does it mean that so because I feel there's one school of thought saying, okay, it's healthy, everyone feels this, but also on the other side, if you've completely healed your childhood, you know, whatever, not trauma, but you know, your childhood, it shouldn't be so strong. What's your opinion? Like, are strong emotions an indicator that there's still work to be done, or is it just human?
I think it depends on the circumstance. You know, if somebody pulls in front of me with the car and nothing really happens other than I'm caught off guard and I blow up, that's emotional backlog. If terrorists come running out of the woods and begin killing my children, that's real.
Yeah.
So it all depends on the circumstance. I would say for most of us, 99% of the time, it's emotional backlog. And, you know, I don't know how, you know, there are certainly people who the terrorist incident would hit home, but 99.999% of us wouldn't, you know, we wouldn't really have that kind of situation.
Yeah. And I was actually hosting a workshop last week where, and I'm feeling this emotion now, but also the listeners or the team was, the invitees were feeling this, where they're doing a lot of work and they still feel this, there's emotional backlog. It's still not healed.
Yeah.
And although it's not one size fits all, but if listeners are, you know, thinking I've been doing a lot, but still, like like there's still things triggering me a lot.
Mhm.
How can we give them a vision, or like yeah, how the journey looks like?
Well, the journey looks like, you could go back and do a lot of emotional healing around things that are really not the core issue. The real core issue is going to be mom and dad, and then perhaps siblings, and there are significant people in your life as a child. And so you really have to go back and, it takes a supportive environment because we can't do it on our own. A side note is all of our issues are created in relationship to other people, and they have to be healed in relationship to other people too. And certainly, many times I'm the first other person that they're dealing with. And what I'm doing is really, I'm like a guide. I'm guiding them down this path into the past. I'm guiding them into that past where all of those emotional backlogs are just hanging out and looking for some way to be healed, some way to be expressed. And so as you sit with them and you have them breathe into it, if you're not breathing into those feelings, you're not letting those feelings go. If
Mm,
you're, it's like the difference between stretching and yoga. If you're stretching, you're pulling on the muscle. If you're doing yoga, you're breathing into the muscle and it's letting go. The whole different tactic. And so, when I'm guiding people to the depths of their core issues, they have to be breathing. And so I teach them how to do that. I sort of trick them into it, to be honest with you. I say, breathe and say this, breathe and feel that. And they begin to connect those two. Because if you're not breathing, you're up in your head. You can empty your head of all the logic and all the anger and all the fear and everything that's up in your head, and that's not going to heal anything. That's just going to, you're just going to continue on.
oh, so you're talking about real breathing, not metaphorical breathing, like
Every time, watch in a child's life, every time they're feeling something, every time something happens to them that they don't know how to deal with, they quit breathing.
yeah.
All of those things are stored in our gut by we quit breathing, and that's how we store them. And so if they were created by not breathing, they need to be healed by breathing into them.
So fascinating, especially that you started, or you're a doctor in chiropractic, so you must have seen those things like stuck in the body as well.
Sure.
Like, for example, if I talk about myself, I have
Mhm.
a chronic issue of the shoulder
Mhm.
left. So in some like schools, it's like the maternal part, left is
Mhm.
maternal and right is rational or paternal.
Mhm.
And definitely it enhances when I stop breathing, and like the osteopath and everyone told me it's because you don't breathe well, but it's really linked to what you're explaining.
Breathing is everything.
Yeah.
Breathing and are you breathing up here or are you breathing down into your gut? Are you breathing fully and deeply? It's the difference between punishing and being kind to yourself. It's
Mm,
between, the level of breathing is your level of connection with yourself and others, with the world.
mm. It's as if when you don't breathe, you're like unconsciously telling yourself, I don't deserve life in a way.
Exactly what, you know. Many times I'll ask a client to finish the sentence, they'll say, if I love myself, I'm afraid other people will.
Yeah.
And they breathe in again and say, so if I love and accept myself, I'm afraid other people will. And
Yeah.
it starts off with, being disconnected, that other people might not like me or they'll think I'm arrogant. And then it's like, well, if they see you as arrogant, I'm afraid they won't like me. I'm afraid they'll leave me alone. I'm afraid I'll be all alone. So it really comes out that if I love and accept myself fully, that I'll die. And
It's so
everybody gets
heavy.
to that same point.
Mm,
And so, how can you ever love yourself if you have a belief system in your mind that says, if I love myself, I'll die? Now,
mm.
that might sound silly to the adult, but to that little girl inside, that's very real.
Yeah.
Because if she would have breathed and been in her power, if she would have breathed and accepted herself fully as a child, she probably would have created greater disconnection between her and her parents who didn't love and accept themselves unconditionally. They would have felt uncomfortable. They wouldn't have known what to do with it. That
Yeah,
makes
the thing of arrogance is very common actually in emotional eating. A lot of the people that do emotional eating is to they feel arrogant or selfish or guilty, for example, if they love themselves, if they prioritize their emotions, or even if someone in their family, usually mother or maternal figure, is upset, sad, etc., and they don't take on this sadness.
right.
So
So why are you letting other people run your life? Why are you giving up your power to other people? Why are you letting other people decide how you should feel? Why are you letting other people decide whether you're worthy?
yeah.
And that's, I understand it as a child, but as an adult, you have a choice. And the choice, if you really want to make that choice to not give up your power anymore, to be able to love and accept yourself, there's only one option, and that is to go back and reconnect with and help heal that inner child.
Yeah, let's. I want to go deep into that because what I've noticed is that very often when you look for resources online, of course, I feel the best form of treatment is one-on-one. But let's say someone is listening to this and they've heard again and again and again, like love yourself and everything. So let's take a hypothetical, which is surely not hypothetical example. Someone wants to love themselves, but maybe for them, the perceived risk of loving themselves is really high. What can they like? What small
You
exercise?
mean as a child or as an adult?
Like it would be an adult, but I'm thinking it's their inner child talking there.
Well, you can't do it on your own. I've tried it on my own. I've seen it, the effort many times. You have to find somebody who you feel safe with. You
Mm.
have to find somebody who has done that work themselves. There was a time when all sorts of psychologists and psychiatrists were coming to me because they saw that they hadn't healed a part of themselves, and so they couldn't help their clients heal that part of them. Say they hadn't dealt with their anger, or their shame, or their hurt, or something. And so they had to really come to somebody like myself who had done all that work and could help them heal that. And then they could go back into their practices, and when somebody came in with that, they could comfortably deal with that. And so, yeah,
And why
go
do you
ahead.
think you cannot do it by yourself? What's limiting?
We have done everything we could as a child to shove that stuff away to make sure nobody ever sees it. We have really, it's the stuff that we're most afraid of, most ashamed of, most concerned that if anybody sees that part of themselves or that part of me, then they won't like me. I'll be all alone and die as a child. And so it's really, you have to find somebody who can, first of all, you're going to quit breathing, and then you're going to get distracted. It's like you were talking about emotional eating. Emotional eating just comes from being unconscious. You're not aware of what you're putting in your mouth. And so that's a choice.
Mm.
You can make a choice to be conscious or unconscious. You can make a choice to be what level of consciousness you're on. And so I'm not criticizing. I appreciate and understand why they do that, but it's really a matter of, okay, so if I can't keep myself from eating, then I need somebody to help me understand and heal what's, what I'm at the effect of. And so you
Yeah.
find somebody who you feel safe with. They have a safe environment where you feel like you can trust and be open. And in that openness, you have somebody who can guide you into the depths of, who and what you are, what you're hiding, what you need to heal. It's always obvious, to be quite honest with you, but it takes, the level of guidance is going to be determined by their own level of healing, the therapist level of healing. And so
Yeah.
you really have to find somebody who has done the work. They've done the work, the more that, I think that's why I'm extraordinarily good at being an executive coach. And a good executive, a good leader is really just a more conscious person. And so all I'm doing is, even in my longer programs, the initial programs are all about healing the past so that it empowers the future. But the bigger programs, the longer ones, are really about them integrating into their life all the different aspects of leadership, literally neurologically rewiring their brain for success, literally changing all their old patterns in relationship to other people, communication, empathy, compassion, the emotional intelligence development, all of that. And so it's really a matter of, I'll be honest with you, when I'm working with people, all I'm ever doing is showing them the next level of perception, the next level of consciousness that they could see something from. So all I'm doing is sharing a different perception of what they're dealing with. And that different perception is really just a different level of consciousness. And so all I'm ever doing is guiding people into higher and higher levels of consciousness so that they can be more self-aware and other aware, so that they can be a better person, a better leader, better in relationship, all aspects of their life.
Mm. I want to understand more about the program, but before I have a question on how do you know, again, thinking of listeners, that let's say they're starting their journey or even like they're a bit advanced, but how would you know if things are still blurry in your head? Let's say you're not at the highest level of consciousness, which I would say I'm not at the highest level at all. How would I know if this other person is higher than myself?
You'd feel it.
The intuition.
I think so. That's really what you'd have to learn to trust. I mean, you can certainly look at what other people have said. I mean, probably, somebody goes to my LinkedIn profile, piece, they can find all these different people saying who Ron is, what Ron's done for them. So that gives you some, logical credibility in that kind of way. But you also, the people who call, who finally get on a call with me, all I'm doing is really asking them questions. But those questions bring them to levels of insight and understanding that they've never had before. And so they begin to go, oh, this guy knows exactly what he's looking for. He's supporting me and seeing things that I've done everything I could to ignore and not acknowledge. And in that acknowledging, they see, oh, that's where my pain is. That's where my challenge and limitations are. And if I don't take care of those, I'll just carry those into my life. I'll pass them on to my children. I'll be limited and held back from ever knowing who and what I truly am.
Yeah, so it's like they're asking questions that hit home, basically. They hit
Mm.
the thing that you never wanted to hit, but at the same time, it feels so good to hit
Yeah.
it.
I mean, a little side reference is your relationship with yourself is always mirrored in your relationships with others. So if you ever really want to get a good glimpse of your relationship with yourself and how it looks, just look at your relationship with others.
Mm,
Are you fully open as you do those relationships with an open heart and an open mind?
yeah.
Are you accepting and compassionate and kind to yourself and others?
Yeah. And reaching unconditional love, like, to be honest, I don't know a lot of people that really actually have unconditional love. Is it
I can
something,
imagine.
yeah, is it something that one can reach in a life? Like, is it a point in time where you say, okay, I got there?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
All it is collecting. You let go of and you hid all these different parts of yourself. Well, as you reconnect with and heal those different parts of yourself, as you learn to accept those different parts of yourself, they really become part of who and what you are. And that's a process of really breathing and becoming whole. And as you
Yeah.
become whole and self-accepting, that's where unconditional love comes from. That results in unconditional love. So the more you accept and love all of those different parts of yourself that you've hidden away and, you know, denied because your fear of not being accepted by others, as you integrate them into your life, you become whole, you become self-accepting, and you love yourself unconditionally. That
Mm.
doesn't mean you don't make mistakes. It doesn't mean you don't go, oops, I shouldn't have done that, but I want to learn from that. At that point, emotions are are really wonderful things. All your emotions are really nothing but indicators telling you, oh, here's a part that wants to be healed. Here's a part that's ready to be healed. And as you breathe into those, and you've, of course, learned how to deal with those and heal those emotional points as they come forward, they're wonderful gifts, because as soon as you heal them, you access a part of yourself that takes you into that next level of awareness, next level of leadership, next level of self-acceptance and love.
Yeah, and that's what you do in the program. You said, yeah, there's the initial stage and then the second one. Can you tell us a bit more about it? And then
Which one?
maybe you can do a trial exercise on me, like a
So,
breathing.
yeah. So, I mean, yeah, just take a breath right now.
I felt I needed it, but then I didn't want to interfere with the sound. I should have gone on mute, but again, I don't allow myself to go on mute.
So
But
what you just did was avoid breathing. Do you see what all that chatter that was you avoiding breathing. So, and that's because you'll feel vulnerable. And so if somebody like myself just sort of smiles and says, yes, now breathe. So breathe, put one hand on your belly. And as you breathe in, you should feel your belly extend out a little bit. And then you relax it. Your shoulders should stay relaxed. They shouldn't be going up or down. Your lungs are down in your belly, not up in your shoulders. And as you breathe, you begin to feel that, oh, maybe my body does that. My body knows how to breathe more than it just connects everything. My body is perfectly aware of how to breathe. All I have to do is let it breathe. So taking in several gentle breaths, and just as you breathe in, inwardly say the word in. As you breathe out, inwardly say the word out. And in that moment of breathing, as you continue with that, you're giving yourself one of the greatest gifts you could ever give yourself. And that is the opportunity to be present with yourself, to become curious about my breathing, curious about whatever it is that you're dealing with in life. And in that moment, when you let yourself breathe as you are, as you breathe, you have that privilege of really being present and curious enough to look at your life, look at any given circumstance and see, well, what's really going on here? What am I at the effect of? What am I responding to? And more importantly, what's the next best step I can take? And as you keep breathing, you see that next best step. And that's the one you take. And this is the process of being mindful.
mm, when you were saying the next best step I can take, in my mind, I kept is to breathe.
There you go. That's
The answer.
a good one.
Yeah, because sometimes you're facing something where the solution is not imminent, and the only thing you can do is just breathe.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
If you're breathing, you're accessing the best of who and what you are. If you're not breathing, you've cut off all of your capabilities.
yeah, yeah,
And so I understand why people are afraid. If they're not breathing, they should be afraid, because they're disconnected from themselves,
yeah.
with the eating thing that you were talking about earlier, it's like, yeah, if it's emotional, if it's stress, if it's boredom, they're the only thing they've trained themselves to do is to eat, which grounds them in a sense, but it also keeps them from breathing. That's just like a lot of the business people I deal with, they don't do the eating, they go up into their head and become logical and linear and, controlling and that sort of thing. So everybody has their different ways of controlling their emotions, but some are very unsupportive. It's like a child, as a parent, you're really helping a child deal with their emotions. You're really helping them learn to regulate their emotions. So if a child's crying and you beat them, they learn, oh, when I'm crying, I don't want to make other people uncomfortable, so I need to be mean to myself.
Mm.
You know, where another parent might love the child. You know, I remember I was, as a chiropractor, I used to do all of that different work in my faculty in my facility. But I remember this one woman, a lovely woman, and she had come in, and her little girl, you know, under 2 years old, was kind of walking around the office as I was working on her. And the child was just in the other room and started to fuss and cry. And the woman, rather than getting upset and doing all sorts of different things, just as she had her face down on the pillow, she says, "I love you." And the
Aw.
child immediately stopped crying. And I just captured that moment in my mind as really perfect parenting,
Yeah.
because she was so in touch with the child that she knew all that child needed was that little stroke on her head, that little moment of love. And that's
Yeah.
like, okay, you know, I
So
haven't been
emotional.
abandoned, I'm loved. You
Yeah, it's
know,
so
and she
beautiful.
could have yelled, you know, and could have said, quiet down, rah, 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 I'll just be
Yeah.
a minute.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And the child would have grown up with different belief systems as to how to treat themselves and others.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so interesting. Oh my God, I have so many questions. I had a big question in my mind and then I forgot it, which was, yes. Um, I guess instead of me continuing to ask questions about leadership, you're the expert. What question, what can you say? What answer would you like to give, or information do you think everyone needs to know? But actually, no one asks you about this question.
You know, I see so many people out there trying to train people how to be a leader. It's like, this is how you become emotionally intelligent. This is how you communicate with people. This is how, you know, so they're teaching them how to do something. They're not teaching them how to become that conscious person who would naturally communicate in a more compassionate, supportive way. They're not transforming that person into the person that they're capable of being, who would automatically, you know what to say and how to say it. And so we're turning, you know, we have a leadership crisis already. But with the way people are training people to how to act like a leader rather than really literally transform and become a leader, we're going to have a huge, huge leadership problem compared to even the one we have now. Because everybody's going to be running around acting as if rather than actually being,
Mm.
you know. And if you really want to make money, if you really want to have a successful life, if you really want to, you know, have an organization that's functioning without you having to micromanage anything, become a successful leader, a conscious leader. Become a leader who is so aware and so supportive of everybody else that they're developing their leadership skills so that they're doing most of everything that needs to be done. And all you're doing is guiding them and overseeing them. You know, the people who reach into those levels, they might have 5 large organizations because they really don't have to do much. You know,
Yeah,
yet
it
I,
gives less mental space.
yeah,
Like, I've realized when I was at the beginning of my own leadership, like even sending an email would take a lot of time because I had
yeah,
all those thoughts and triggers and everything. And now I just send the email in 2 seconds.
yeah. And be a successful high-level leader in today's rapid changing, ever more complex business world, you have to be present. You have to be breathing, you have to be present, you have to be fully conscious so that your mind is agile enough to handle all of the different questions and situations and, you know, between employees and the market and the industry and the product and the, you know, and your family and everything else. You have to be, rather than reacting, you have to be present and just taking those things in and supportively, you know, doing what's optimal to do.
Yeah, and I feel especially with I know it's the topic that's really cliche. I don't like to talk about it, but with next gen AI, I feel a lot of skills will be will be replaced, or a lot of competencies will be done by AI. But those of leadership and people skills, it's only
Right.
humans.
Yeah. AI will only do what we determine it should do.
Mm.
It's only going to, yeah, and it's going to be determined by our level of consciousness. If we're
Mm.
really conscious leaders, then AI is going to be this wonderful assistant
Yeah.
that we have. If we are fear-based and trying to control everything, then we're going to use it in ways that are not going to turn out well for anybody.
Yeah. And what about leader? I want to talk about it. So we spoke about leader within, like your own leadership. We spoke about leader in organization. Let's talk about leaders at home. Moms, dads, leading kids, different ages.
Mhm.
Like dilemmas that I have from listeners that say, "Oh, my kid wants to eat chocolate or like ice cream 5 days a week, or not five times a day. Should I let them follow their own intuition, or how do I have them tap into their own leadership?" And yeah,
So I'll use a simple old image. Does the dog wag the tail, or does the tail wag the dog?
oh yeah, I don't have an answer.
Well, the dog wags the tail. In other words, the
Oh
mother should be
yeah,
the mother, and the child shouldn't be in. The child doesn't know how to deal with things. The child doesn't know, you're guiding that child. That's your point of being a parent, is to guide this child into higher degrees of awareness, self-acceptance, and love, hopefully, not fear. Now, and in doing so, they learn that what's best. I mean, I came from a dairy family. I mean, ice cream was everywhere.
yeah,
And and yet I still love ice cream, but I won't eat it. And I shouldn't even say I won't. I just don't eat it more than once or twice a week,
yeah,
and in a portion that's, supportive. But I also have, a wonderful diet, and have for 50 some years, and so, mm, you have to have self-regulation, and that can only come from self-healing of that inner child. It really always comes back down to that. When you in leadership, whether it's a parent or a corporate, CEO, are they leading from fear, or are they leading from love? And that is determined by whether they, how much they love and accept themselves. A mom who is just doing what her mom did, which you hear about a lot, is really not very conscious. They're just unconsciously doing, following old patterns that they were taught, that are fear-based and unconscious. You have to, it's a choice, and it's somewhat of a difficult choice in the beginning to go, okay, I'm not going to stay in my little limiting comfort zone that's going to end up killing me. I'm going to step out of that old program and really learn to breathe, and learn to accept and love myself and be in my power, if not for myself, for my children, so that they can grow up not being afraid, so that they can grow up learning to love and accept themselves, so that they can have relationships that are based on how fully can we open up our hearts, rather than, well, let's hide things from each other so that we can stay together in this limited experience of love that's really fear-based. And so it's a choice, and to be quite honest with you, to heal that emotional backlog significantly, so that you not only have healed it enough, but you know how to continue to heal it whenever it comes up, takes 60 days. It takes about 2 months.
oh
That's all
only,
it takes.
oh
All it
wow,
takes. I've been doing it for 45 years. And unless somebody is just absolutely resistant, which has only been literally about 2 or 3 people in that entire time, everybody comes out of it the other end just completely transformed. And all that they've done is they've fallen in love with themselves. They're looking inside of themselves for everything they need, rather than outside, where they'll never find it anyway.
oh wow. So what you're saying is that you're a parent and you have to give instructions, quote unquote, to your kids
Guidance.
when they're watching too much TV, whatever it is. If you healed your emotional backlog and you healed and you love yourself unconditionally, the instruction that you give to your kid is always going to be beneficial for them, because it's coming because you want the best for them, and it's not because you're afraid they will be damaged or hurt or whatever, like you've been.
Right. Right.
Oh wow. So basically work on yourself. Like, yeah, it's like work on yourself.
It's always going to come back to that. It
Yeah.
always is. Yeah.
And those
Yeah.
60 days that you were talking about, how do they look like?
They look like you becoming more self-aware.
Yeah.
They look like you choosing to learn to breathe rather than not breathe. They look like you being willing to reconnect with, accept, and love all those different parts of yourself that you've hid away.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like.
Yeah.
That's the process.
Oh, nice. Thank you. So I guess if listeners want to heal themselves with you, or they want to hear more about you, where can they find you?
I think my website, ronstotts.com, stotts.com is a good starting point. My program, Creating Your Inspired Life, there's 3 different ways to take it. And so, financially, you can find a way to do it if you really want to do it. And they would take that and they'd get on a call with me. We'd talk about what they need to do, what would be best for them. And then they jump in and change their life.
Wow. Thank you very much. It's definitely planted some seeds in my mind. So thank you very much.
Yeah. So the choice is whether you're going to do it, and I'm not saying to you, but to anybody that seed gets planted, but are they willing to water it? Are they willing to breathe into it and let it grow?
Yeah, like the
That's the choice.
saboteurs. Because
And
they
most
take
people
you.
kind of go, "Oh, that was an interesting seed," and then they quit breathing and go have some ice cream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so true. Oh yeah, that's really true. Definitely there's the whole topic. I don't know if you call them the saboteurs, but those voices that like give you all the reasons why you shouldn't do like self-development or work on yourself. And
Yeah,
it's
but that's you. Those aren't separate from you. Those are you.
yeah,
And you can make friends with those. You can those all those saboteurs can become people who are aspects of yourself that support you in living a more full, connected, loving life.
yeah. Is it true that the saboteurs they grow with you, and they like the more conscious you are, the more like they become even more conscious, if you want, or this part becomes even stronger.
You heal those parts, and that's how you become more conscious.
Mm.
So they
Yeah.
aren't saboteurs any longer, Yeah.
Wow. Thank you very much. It's been really helpful. Thank you for being part of the podcast.
Yeah. No, I enjoyed it. And I hope people can see that they have a choice and that choice will change their lives and give them all the options for success and love and, that they're looking for.
Yeah, and generations to come.
In generations, yes. And because there's like an emotional family tree. And if you don't get up there and thin it out and clean it up, you're just passing it on along to your kids. And they're going to pass it to their kids and on and on and on. And that's
Yeah.
how we got to where we are.
Yeah, because I mean, I know we were going to close the podcast, but there's still some, like, I just want to continue a bit the conversation, because this transmitting generation by generation, it's said that we always say it takes 7 or 8 generations to get out of poverty. And I've recently read an article that even bacteria that transmit some features, E. coli, that transmit their velocity to the generations after them for 7 generations. So there is definitely we transmit, and there's a whole angle of therapy which is called family constellations, which probably you know about. Like, yeah, definitely, I think it's almost like our responsibility to work on ourselves for like all the generations to come.
I certainly think so. Yeah, I certainly, I've got kids and grandkids, and I can, there was a family that came to me. I was in the San Francisco area, and they were both in their probably mid-20s. Lovely couple. They had just gotten married a couple of years before. They had a daughter who was, I think, 1 or 2 at the time. And they went through my work, each individually and then as a couple. And it was so wonderful to watch because I became their godparent to their children, there are a couple of them.
Mm.
And so, they're very good friends 30 some years later still. But to watch how those kids came out, to watch each, there's 3 of them, and they're just amazing children. And they've been amazing all the way through their journey
Mm.
because they were raised in this feeling of love and support and nurturing. And because the parents had taken the time to learn to love and accept themselves. So their individual selves brought so much to the kids, but that as a couple brought so much to the kids. And so the kids are now, they're getting married and they're having, they'll be having kids. But the kids are so successful in their life, in all aspects of their life. And even, one has some really severe neurological challenges, and he's just blossomed and doing amazing things, having a huge impact in the world. So, if they would have been raised in a traditional setting by parents who didn't love themselves, well, they would have been far different kids. Yeah, they would have been struggling like everybody. They would have been, trying to figure it out and not sure what they were the effect of, and raising kids that were
Yeah,
same
I
department.
can't help myself but thinking of
Mhm.
those parents that have either teenagers or even adult children, and they're a bit like regretting. What can we give them as tools to change their future and the future of their kids?
Same thing.
Yeah, same. It always come. Apparently, that's what they say. Before awakening, you chop wood, and after awakening, you chop wood. You still do the same
I
thing.
remember I had a client come to me. It was in Santa Barbara, and she was a wonderful gal, and she had, I think it was 5 siblings, and her mom, her dad had passed away some time ago, and I remember her telling me, I can't tell my family about this because they don't believe in therapy. They don't really like any of this stuff. And within, I have an 8-week program, and that within a few weeks, she noticed that on all of her calls with her siblings, they were talking about emotional things and deeper things than they had ever talked about.
Oh, wow.
She, about 4 weeks in, she was talking to her mom, and her mom said, "Oh, yeah, I decided I wanted to go to therapy. I figured there was some things that I needed to look at." And that was kind of my beginning of going, "Oh, yeah, this radiates out." Even though these people are all over the United States, they're being affected by what this one family member is doing, and all beginning their own inner journey to whatever degree they'll do it. But yeah, so it's very real.
Yeah, I've experienced this a little bit, what you're on
Mm,
myself.
right. Yeah.
So, yeah.
There you go.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
So I just wish everybody to be kind to themselves, to take care of themselves, to be willing to fall in love with themselves and lead the life that they're fully capable of creating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
All right. You take care of yourself, okay? Remember to breathe. That a girl.